Hello, my name is Ron. Tell you a little bit about my story as it relates to the Plains and Eastern Clean Line Transmission project. That's me in the picture, and this is my best friend, Nikki. This is what the view looked like in the summer of 2009, and that was the reason that we purchased this house because of the fantastic views it has. And what you can see is a small lake called Lake Ludwig in the background. It's about half a mile away down a draw, and there's a bluff to either side on this side of the lake. The mountains immediately above the lake, those low-lying mountains, are called the Turkey Mountains, and those that are further off are called the Woods Mountains. It's a very beautiful sight, and it was a very compelling reason why we decided to purchase this property in retirement. It really started out as and is today, but may not be in the future, retirement living at its best. This is the view that one would see as they pass by our house on our one-lane gravel road. Another thing that attracted us to this area was this one-lane gravel road. It's very beautiful to drive underneath a canopy of trees. And during the summertime, it's great to walk the dog. Unfortunately, we don't have him any longer. We had to put him down because of cancer, but still, occasionally we do go down this road for a nice, comfortable, relaxing walk. Even during the hot summer, it feels like it's 20 degrees cooler underneath the shade of the trees. And one of the concerns that we have is what will the construction traffic do as they try to move large and heavy equipment down this road where it dead ends at a gas well. Well, we purchased this house. The kind of view that we saw, that the house sitting on a hill overlooking Lake Ludwig and the mountains beyond. We thought the home didn't quite completely meet our needs. We've been looking for 2 years to find the perfect house and location. Well, we found the location, and one of the reasons that we thought the location was ideal was not just because of the exceptional views, okay, but our thought at that time was that we could change the home, but not the view. But Plains and Eastern in that clean line transmission project is obviously proving that our assumptions were wrong. This is a more recent picture taken from the deck that makes the property most desirable. As I mentioned, it's a view of lake and two mountain ranges. But this is a photograph I'd like you to take maybe a little closer look at. It was taken as the sun's rising from the east. The east is to your right. Okay, every morning is different. Okay, the colors are different and the shades are different. The amount of fog, if any, is different every day. What a wonderful way to wake up in the morning as you make coffee and look out the kitchen window or the bedroom window when you're getting dressed, or the French door, the glass French doors that we have that allow us to, as we eat breakfast, to gaze on this view. It's just, and it really just sets the tone for the day. It's not unlike, if any of you have been to the Grand Canyon, you know that the best time to view the canyon is when? It's during the early morning hours and the late afternoon hours as the sun is lower to the horizon, because the colors change so dramatically. It's just stunning. It's beautiful. And that's the kind of thing we had. We had kind of like a little piece of God's creation. Now this is what that would look like with the transmission line there. Okay, now what I've done is I've taken a photograph and I've superimposed to scale as best I can what a structure might look like. Those structures could be as high as 200 feet. The scaling I used was for 180-foot high structures with 30 feet of the base obscured because the trees are hiding it. So as you can see, this view is, well, it's really in our face because it towers 150 feet over the tops of the trees, and it could be as little as 300 yards from our home Actually, these are pushed back another 400 or 500 feet beyond that. To give you some sense of scale, the lake that you see, the little bit of the lake that you see in blue down there, that's about a half a mile away. I don't think there's anybody that would disagree that the visual pollution would depreciate the value of a home. And we purchased 29 acres, not because of just this view, but also because of other potential building sites, which end up actually being on the good siting is closer by 200 or 300 yards to the line than what you see here. So it makes our investment in the property, it just completely negates that. It appreciates the value of our home and the rest of the 29 acres. And this is a case where the easement doesn't, or the right-of-way will not physically, as it's designed now, cross our property. So Plains and Eastern offers no compensation for the loss of value of the property that they're causing in close proximity. And I think this is wrong. What they're doing is they're taking money out of my pocket. They're taking my part of my investment, and it's lining the pockets of shareholders. And to make matters even worse, the Department of Energy has had a flawed scoping process where it involves the people in the area so they can provide comment. Well, the reality is we can't comment. There's no way we can realistically comment on 3,700 pages of technical and legal documents. We don't have the skill set to do that. We don't have the deep pockets. We simply don't have the deep pockets that well-financed Plains and Eastern has, nor that Department of Energy has. It's to make the thing fair, we would need some sort of ad litem attorney or working group to work in our behalf. And I think personally it should be financed by Department of Energy, in as much as this is their call for a project. I stand to lose about, my best guess right now is about $30,000 of property value. And if you extract that over the 27 miles of line that crosses Johnson County alone, it could be $4 to $8 million of property losses that are coming out of landowner pockets that are not reimbursed. I'm not talking about where they're reimbursed for the right-of-way, okay, or the structures that are on there. These are losses that go beyond that. And so, we're being asked to basically finance this line through our loss. Plains and Eastern is not paying for what they're taking from us, and that's a very important point. They're not paying for what they're taking away from us. Noise pollution is another thing. I've been doing some research into trying to get information on corona noise, and I've looked at what the decibel level, tried to look at what the decibel level should be. That means how noisy is it, and how would it impact us. Well, there's a couple of things that you have to take into consideration. First, we start with the graph that's in the noise technical report, and it only goes out, projects the noise level only out at about 400 or 500 feet. But once you project that same curve out to, say, 1,000 feet, which would be about the place where those lines would be in proximity to our house, it's still 35 or more decibels, or dBA. Now, what does that mean? Well, we happen to live in what's called I would call it a library quiet environment. This rural area is very, very quiet. So the smallest noises, okay, can be very intrusive. Now, if I hear the sound of a woodpecker, well, that's not so bad. It's a creation of God, and it's creating a sound, and there's life out there. But if you have to hear the constant hissing and a little bit of crackling that goes on with corona noise on high voltage DC power lines, and you have to hear that day in and day out, that becomes very disruptive. Disruptive to the point where probably potential buyers of this property, if we were to sell, could not, and at some point we will have to sell, they would walk up and say, well, the view's marred by the power lines. Maybe I can live with that, but what is that noise? And it goes on 24/7. Plains and Eastern will tell you, well, at that distance you won't hear it. But let me tell you something. I can hear conversations going on at the lake, because when you live in hilly terrain, sounds travel different than they do on the flat prairie. Beyond the bluff, where it falls out, which is beyond where that transmission line is, at night I can hear a car going down a gravel road. It sounds like it's on my property. So what happens is, in varying terrain like this, it's not unusual for sound to be channeled and amplified. You know, it's kind of like an outdoor amphitheater where one person can speak and the whole audience for a considerable distance can hear you very clearly. And there's no consideration given for that, and there's no consideration for the damaging effects that it causes to not only people's lives, but their prosperity as well. I mean, our homes are our investments out here. Think about this before I go on to my final slide. You know, if there was a power line like this on top of Mount Rushmore at the beginning of the 1900s, either the power line would have come down or Mount Rushmore would have never happened. We wouldn't have those beautiful images to look at. Looking at the same sort of situation with Mount Rushmore as it is today, would anyone dare put power lines across the top of Mount Rushmore to ruin that view? Well, I think you know what the answer to that is. And that's what they've done to us here in this area. This is our Mount Rushmore. Okay, it's not as great as Mount Rushmore maybe, but you know what? It's ours. Arkansas is the natural state. It's, you know, and what's happening is there are companies that don't live here, okay, and what they're doing is they're slicing and dicing up this beautiful part of God's country. Residents like me, you know, I said this was my story. Well, really, it's not just my story. It's the story of an untold number that happened to be impacted adversely along the extent of this particular electric line. So I ask you to, if you would please, call your congressman. Tell them you're opposed to the Clean Line project and why. Call your congressman. We need your help. You can call Senator Bozeman's office, or you can call Senator Cotton's office. You can call your local representative's office. But please, please, we need your help, because we're being ambushed from two sides. One side that's ambushing us is Plains and Eastern with their deep pockets, and Department of Energy, who's complicit, happens to be complicit in this, in as much as they have sent out a call for projects. And so far there has been no consideration for the plight that we have out here. So this is how it'll end up if we can't get the action that we really need. This is the view, what was once a pristine view, and this is what we'll be looking at every morning when we get up. But also there's a corona noise, and if you listen closely, you'll hear it in the background. The noise you're hearing is from a 225 kilovolt power line. This particular line will be, they say, plus or minus 600 kilovolts. So, you know, begs the question, what will this high voltage power line sound like when it's 2 or 3 times the voltage that, you know, for that which we have in this sample? And then I ask you, would you want to live with this image, you know, directly in front of you? Would you want to live with this constant hissing noise in the background? Would you buy a house with this kind of view? Would you buy a house if you knew you're going to have to constantly listen to this noise?